Swaminiti Namane. Namaste Saraswati Devi. Gauravani Pracharine. Nirvisesa Sunyavani Prasachita Satari. My deepest gratitude to Panchagoda and Dharmatma, Devak, and my new friend Pradyumna over here. All of my, whoops, light? What happened?
India.
2 minutes. Just now coming. Anyway, deep gratitude to all my old God brothers and sisters and my new God brothers and sisters and God friends here at Krishna Balaram Temple in Vrindavan. Most of all, my deepest gratitude to Lord Krishna for giving me this long life, nearly 78 now, to recount and broadcast the inconceivable glories of my spiritual master, Srila Prabhupada, A.C. Bhakti-Vedanta Swami Prabhupada, who appeared in this Western world, 54 years ago, to plant the ancient seed of Krishna consciousness in a world gone mad. Most of you know the story, how it happened, how the Swami captured a few of us, and how in such short time the Hare Krishna culture exploded around the world. And especially if you've read Volume 1. How many have read Volume 1? Almost everybody. Okay, so we're ready for Volume 2 tonight. This is the real story of India, how it happened. I was an eyewitness to this rebirth of the Hare Krishna movement in the ancient land of India. So I guess if you had to pick a theme for Volume 1, it would be Bhakti-Vedanta Swami, the perfect person. How in the mid-1960s he stepped through the perfect window in time to demonstrate by his personal example a perfect teacher, a guru, a perfect master, your best friend, and one who loves you more than anyone you know. He knows everything. He never makes mistakes. He never sleeps. He has a plan to change the world. So, and to us in those early days, he was our pirate chief, the hilarious leader of our little band of merry pranksters. And his marching order to us is, chase the rhino, go for it. Take the biggest risks for Krishna. And Krishna himself must personally interfere in your activities on his behalf. Take risks for Krishna and see Krishna faster. So these were the themes of Volume 1, which has unfortunately been sold out. I guess fortunate for me. But Volume 2 now, it starts in India, October 1970. And it describes the 2-year period, roughly 2-year period, when Srila Prabhupada brings his Western devotees to India and the amazing adventures which followed. The theme or purpose or message in Volume 2 can be broken down into, let's say, 3 parts. 1, for the first time, Srila Prabhupada is the commander-in-chief. In America and in Europe, Srila Prabhupada was there. He instructed us how to do certain things. He gave us the Vedic knowledge. But pretty much we all knew how to rent buildings, build things, build altars, transportation, everything. Prabhupada was our visitor in the West. But here in India, he was the commander-in-chief. We didn't know how to do anything. Srila Prabhupada had to teach us how to eat, how to sleep, how to take care of our health, how to act, the manners that you must have to exist in India. Everything. Srila Prabhupada had to, he was in command of every detail of his expedition here. So that's one thing. And then again, this book will stress another point. Srila Prabhupada's perfect historical timing. Just like he was perfectly timed to come into the West in 1965. In 1970, his timing was perfect again. India was a new nation. There was a rebirth as a nation. And it was the rebirth of Krishna consciousness in your new nation. But this may be the most important message from Volume 2. In 1970, Krishna was pretty much gone from India. Krishna was extinct, nearly extinct. And now, as you can see, in less than 50 years, Krishna is everywhere. He's the most famous god in India now. So you will read and be amazed how Srila Prabhupada did it in this book. In a 15-month period, a total time of 15 months, Srila Prabhupada personally, single-handedly, dug deep into the Indian soil and planted the mighty tree of Krishna consciousness that you see in India today. 49 years ago, on November 26, 1971, Srila Prabhupada brought a busload of his Western disciples, about 30 of us, to Vrindavan. It was the first time we were seeing Vrindavan. A few of the guys, maybe Gurdas and a few others, had been here a time or two, but never with Srila Prabhupada. This was our first time seeing Vrindavan with Srila Prabhupada. We'd been hearing everything about Vrindavan for 3 or 4 years now. So this was our first visit. And it was the Holy Grail we expected. Let's read what happened a couple of days later. Srila Prabhupada, we have just arrived in Vrindavan for the first time with his Western devotees. We had been here 2 days sightseeing with Srila Prabhupada. Today, Srila Prabhupada is in a negotiating mood. He returns to his room at Saraf Bhavan, and while his disciples continue sightseeing around Vrindavan, Prabhupada greets a parade of officials, godbrothers, and elevated Brajvasis, such as Krishnadas Babaji and Gaurachand Goswami. In master salesman mode, Swamiji narrates to them his accomplishments in the West and asks the assembled luminaries for one thing only: land. Mr. Kashiram Saraf and his wife Gita Bai tell Prabhupada that they have an empty 4-acre property in Raman Reti and that they're considering donating it to a deserving spiritual group. Raman Reti means charming sands, and it's the place where Krishna used to play with his cowherd friends. Sounds great, so we go to look at it. Saraf Bhavan is across from the main post office in the center of Vrindavan, and the Raman Reti land is about 1.5 miles away, out in rice paddies and undeveloped forest at the junction of Chatikara Road and the Parikrama Path. It's nice land, Gurdas and I agree, but Prabhupada, it's so far from town, and these people walk everywhere. Who will come way out here? This is the beginning of Krishna Balaram Temple. But let's go back in time about a year before that. It's a few months shy of 50 years ago, October 1970. Srila Prabhupada has arrived in Bombay with 20 of us, his Western devotees. Now, there was no plan for this. You must remember in those days there was no email, there was no cell phones. There were just letters. And Prabhupada sent 20 separate letters to 20 separate devotees in America and Europe, requesting that we come and meet him in India. That's all. There was no plan. Somehow or other we all made our separate ways here, and it came together. We met with Prabhupada the first week in October in Bombay. The reason and purpose of Srila Prabhupada's mission in India is probably stated most clearly by him in one of the purports to a verse in the 4th canto of Srimad Bhagavatam. I'll just read that. For the past 2,000 years, India has been subjugated by the rule of foreigners, and the legs of progress have been broken. In the Western countries, the eyes of the people have become blind due to the dazzling glitter of material opulence. The blind man of the Western countries and the lame man of India should combine together in this Krishna consciousness movement. Then the lame man of India can walk with the help of the Westerner, and the blind Westerner can see with the help of the lame man. In short, the material advancement of the Western countries and the spiritual assets of India should combine for the elevation of all human society. So this partnership, the lame man of India and the blind man in America, to create this partnership was and is Srila Prabhupada's mission in India. In his first lecture in Bombay, he famously said, "Unfortunately, Indian people are so much bewildered that they are giving up their God-conscious culture. They want to imitate the West. My mission was that I shall go to America, and if some of the American boys and girls, the younger section, would accept it, then I'll bring them here to show these Indians that how great their culture is. That is my policy." So it's important to kind of imagine that you kind of imagine now what it was like in India in 1970. After more than 200 years of colonial rule, the British had just left India, only 23 years before we came. After 1,500 years of foreign domination, you, India, are a new country. Your government and your economy are struggling to figure out how to manage yourselves, how to survive, how to stabilize in this new global age. 1970 was an experimental time. There were shifting lines: capitalism, communism, nationalism, socialism. The Indian government and economy were trying to find a system, looking inward. It wasn't much global reach yet. In fact, Srila Prabhupada was the first Indian person I ever met in my life. So think about this perfect historical situation, this perfect historical window. 1970, India is young, only 20 years old. The birth of this new nation of India is also the birth of the Krishna consciousness movement in India. This is the perfect historical window chosen by Srila Prabhupada. So into this land struggling with new birth comes one old man, 74 years, and 20 foreign, inexperienced youngsters. We came on one-way tickets. We had no money in our pockets, only a kind of a vague plan that we would meet Prabhupada in Bombay. That was it. He had a plan, but we didn't know what it was. We were suddenly dropped into this very strange and exotic land. Our ideas of India before we came here, well, this is the place where those guys with turbans on their head play flutes to a cobra that's coming up out of a basket. Or these yogis will make a rope go into the sky and climb up into the clouds. Everything was magic in India in our imaginations. And Srila Prabhupada called us here by letters, uncertainty, like I just talked about, there was no plan. We didn't even know each other yet. I mean, I knew Gurdas and Jamuna and of course Malati, and that was it. There were some boys and girls that we had heard of by reputation, Tamal Krishna, Giriraj, and about 15 others, but they were strangers to us. But we had our one common father, our commander-in-chief, Srila Prabhupada, who had to do everything. But he organized us with an ancient system of integrated knowledge that bound us together tight in certain rules of action. What Srila Prabhupada said to do, we did, applying our American ways to doing things in India. And our first big public meeting in early October 1970 was on Chowpatty Beach, just a few blocks from where the Radha Gopinath temple is now. It was called the Bharatya Sadhu Samaj, where Prabhupada famously said, "So these my disciples, practically millions of people in Western countries, are chanting Hare Krishna and taking up this, your Indian spiritual culture. Now you have forgotten. You want to be like them. After money and motor cars. In 1,000 years you cannot have motor cars like they have got. Now they want Krishna, that is all. They want your spiritual treasure house, which you have neglected. This is your wealth, Bhagavad-Gita, why you do not give." Now this was sensational news to the people of India, that the West wants our spiritual culture. That night we gathered around in Srila Prabhupada's room, and he told us the story that it was traditional that if a Maharaj in India married an English lady, that they call her his white elephant. So he looked at us and he said, "Now you are my dancing white elephants." He saw, immediately we became a citywide sensation, and Srila Prabhupada saw the huge response and decided to make Bombay his India headquarters. At first we hit the streets. We were doing Sankirtan every day in the streets. After about a week, Prabhupada stopped us and he said, "In India, if you do this on the streets, they will think you are simply beggars." So he started this life membership program. It was a great idea to get the leaders of India to join, and then others would follow. For life membership in ISKCON, it cost 1,111 rupees. Now that was a lot of money in 1970. I don't know, maybe it's 1 lakh of rupees now. So we went for the wealthy and elite class first. And we did what Americans do best, business and sales. We hit the street. We barged into every office of every CEO in Bombay. In pairs, usually. We paired up good guy and bad guy. My partner in all of this, these life membership promotions, was Rishi Kumar from New York City. He was the bad guy. He was tough. I was the good guy. He would pound on this CEO of hundreds of companies. He would pound on his desk and say, "You must become life member." And then I would have to apologize and say, "Please, sir, forgive him. He's only trying to do what his spiritual master wants him to." Like that. Good guy, bad guy. Anyway, it worked. And we promised them all the books that Prabhupada printed. In actual fact, we had about 2 books each. There were no books. And we promised them that they could stay in every temple in the world as they traveled the world And maybe there were 2 temples in the world that had enough floor space to even sleep. But this was Srila Prabhupada. He always looked far ahead. And he taught us to act like this. Have no fear. Go for it. Risk everything. Nothing is impossible. Chase the rhinoceros. So when we first arrived in India, we expected to see Krishna everywhere. But we couldn't find any. There was no Krishna. There was no Krishna temples in Bombay. Where's Krishna? Hanuman was there. We saw him. We saw Shiva. We saw Ganesh. He was here. And there was some lady with 8 arms with skulls around her neck. She seemed to be everywhere. But we couldn't find Krishna. Couldn't find any Vaishnavas. So it's very important that you understand. You must understand that your own present experience from this perspective. Now you're surrounded by Krishna devotees. Your Krishna's everywhere. Krishna's in your life morning, noon, and night. Everywhere you go, Krishna is there. Krishna hotel, Krishna sweet shop, Krishna bicycle shop. Krishna's everywhere now. Anyway, these stories are all here. From Bombay, we went to places like Amritsar, Indore, Surat, Kumbh Mela. We camped at Kumbh Mela for a month, and the Hare Krishnas were the biggest event in this huge encampment of millions of pilgrims, spiritual pilgrims. The Hare Krishnas were the hit. And one thing we knew how to do best as Americans was put on a show. We had seen some big pandals here and there in our travels in India, so we decided to put up a big pandal show in Cross Maidan, the center of Bombay. Srila Prabhupada put me in charge of that. Boy, did we have fun. And in over a 10-day period, more than 1 million people came to see Srila Prabhupada for the first time. And Bombay fell in love with Srila Prabhupada and his band of merry pranksters. There was one young boy there from Chicago. You may have heard the story. He was a hippie seeking enlightenment in India. He had been here for 9 months, and he met way in the back. He came forward, became your Radhanath Swami. And Radhanath told me that he had a picture of Krishna in his pocket. For months he'd been carrying it around India. A guy with his leg crossed, playing a flute, and he had a peacock feather in his hair. And he didn't know who he was, and nobody could tell him till he saw our Krishna book at the Cross Maidan festival. So this is how, gives you an idea how scarce Krishna was in India 50 years ago. And there were no Indian devotees. No one joined us. For about 6 months, no Indian devotees came forward. I think it was culture shock on both sides. It was certainly culture shock for us to be in India, but I think the Indian people were very puzzled by us. They couldn't understand really what we were and what we were doing for a while. It took some time. One young Indian boy finally joined. He was a Parsi. He became Mahamsa Das. And then at the Cross Maidan, a young Indian student named Raghunath Patil, he decided to join, and he became Lokanath Swami. Last week, I was in Juhu in Bombay speaking, and after the show, I was selling books in the back, and this old man came to me and he said, "You know, I came to your Cross Maidan festival in 1971. I was a student, a young man." He said, "And you guys puzzled us. We couldn't figure out if you were for real. We were very much unwilling to follow you. We weren't sure about you." And he said, "Now in my old age," he says, "it is my biggest regret in life that I did not join you." And then in June 1971, the best thing that ever happened to me Srila Prabhupada appointed me to be his personal secretary. And thus began the wildest, most exciting adventure in my life. The first place we went with Srila Prabhupada as secretary was Russia. You must know that in those days, it was impossible to go to Russia. The world was firmly divided into two camps, two warring camps, communism and capitalism. And down the center was an iron curtain. No one could go to either side. Srila Prabhupada kept saying, but I must go to Russia. Please help me go to Russia. Devotees had been trying for years. He said Russia was the most entangled in Maya of all the people of the world, and that he must go there. So somehow or other we got a visa. And in June 1971, we went to Moscow. We had 5 days on our visa, tourist visa. It was an all-inclusive package, hotel, food, and guided tours to see the spectacle, the glorious spectacle of communism at work. The first day we were there, we were up in the hotel room, and outside of the Prabhupada's window in the street below, we heard a lot of noise. We looked out, and it was a military parade going by. Thousands of soldiers goose-stepping like this, with big guns, artilleries, and tanks, and rockets. As long as this room, rockets. And this went on for about an hour past Prabhupada's window. We heard that it happened every Sunday. And Prabhupada watched the whole thing go by. And then he turned around when it was over, he looked at me, and there was a tear coming out of his eye, and he said, "You cannot rule a nation by fear." He said, "Within 20 years, all of this will be gone." I'll just... On the way to the bank, the second morning we were there, one young boy stopped me on the street and wanted to change rubles. He said, "I'll give you double the rubles for your dollars." I was just about to go in the bank. But I'd been noticing this, the KGB guy was following me everywhere I went. He was the same guy, but he wore different colored ties every time I came out. So I said, "I better not, because we might get in trouble." "Thank you anyway." "See, but have you got any jeans?" "No, I'm wearing a dhoti, I don't wear jeans anymore." "Oh, have you got any Beatles records?" I said, "No, but the spiritual master to the Beatles is up in that hotel room. Do you want to meet him?" So this boy came up with me, and in 3 days I saw the most powerful manifestation of Srila Prabhupada's mystical energy, because he converted this boy into a pure devotee in 3 days' time. That's something like right out of Chaitanya Charitamrita, how he did that. He just patiently gave him pure devotional service, this boy. Everyone knows what happened then. He went on underground and to spread the Krishna consciousness movement around Russia and behind the Iron Curtain, Soviet Union, and made thousands of people devotees. Anatoli was initiated as Ananta Shantidas, and from this tiny beginning, and despite jails, asylums, torture, even government-sponsored killings suffered by those he brought to Krishna consciousness, Ananda Shanti single-handedly created an underground cadre of Hare Krishna devotees that gradually spread throughout the USSR. By the late 1970s, the KGB had set up a special directorate just to quash the Krishna movement. But the Soviet Empire collapsed almost exactly 20 years after Srila Prabhupada's brief visit, as he predicted it would. Prabhupada never returned to Russia. He didn't have to. For him, 5 days was enough to radically change the consciousness of a great nation, and I was the witness. So, quite a few are here tonight, probably from Russia or one of the former Soviet countries. Wherever I go in Vrindavan, I seem to run into Russian people. So just see Srila Prabhupada's mystic power, that you and thousands of your countrymen are living proof of Srila Prabhupada's mystic power to serve Krishna. Anyway, from Moscow we went on to Paris, San Francisco, New York, where we participated in the George Harrison's Bangladesh concert, and then on to London, August of 1971. I don't know how much I should keep talking. All right, I should read this one. Is anyone here very interested in philosophy? Okay, Western philosophy. In London, one day, Srila Prabhupada loved to discuss philosophy with intelligent men and women. And do you know what the Mensa Society is? Does anybody know what that is? The Mensa Society is a group of people, a society that you have to have over 200 IQ to belong to it, something like that. So one day the president and the secretary of Mensa came to visit Prabhupada in his room in London. And for 2 hours, they debated him. I recorded all of this. And every argument they gave, Prabhupada defeated it with logic and authority. By the end of it, these guys were so amazed. They said, "Would you take our intelligence test?" And he said, "No, we don't have to take any intelligence. Krishna, if we are Krishna conscious, we are the most intelligent." So that started it. Prabhupada asked me that night if I had studied philosophy in college. And I said, "Yeah, I did. I majored in philosophy." He said, "Okay." He said, "Then every morning you will come to my room at 8 o'clock, and you will be the Western philosopher. And I will debate you, and I will defeat you every day." So we started. I came as Aristotle, I think, was the first guy. Plato or Aristotle. And we worked our way this went on for 9 months, every day. We worked our way right up to the present day existentialists. And Prabhupada defeated me every time. So I dug up those old tapes, and the summaries of those, the best of those philosophy discussions are in here. Yeah. Okay. Then we were in London. Prabhupada said one night, he says, "ShyamaSundar, I've got invitations, so many. Los Angeles, Paris, this place, that place, Australia. And I have one new one from Nairobi, Africa." He said, "Where do you think we should go next?" I said, well, knowing Prabhupada's adventurous spirit, I said, "Well, Prabhupada, you've never been to Africa?" And he said, "I was thinking the same thing. Make arrangements." So off we flew to Africa, Nairobi. I won't go into all those stories, but there's some great Africa stories in here. And then we came back to India in October 1971. And this, over the next 6 months, 1971, early 72, was the most powerful, Prabhupada's most powerful display in India. If you read what he did in those 6 months here, you'll just be astounded. First, we did the in Calcutta, we did Deshapriya Park Pandal program for 10 days. 10 to 20,000 people a day in Calcutta. Then Delhi. The Delhi Pandal was in Connaught Circus, the very center of Delhi. And during that amazing program, all the political leaders of India came to see this amazing Swami, one of their countrymen who has captured the world. He was introduced every night by a different big politician, the mayor of Delhi, the minister of finance, the minister of defense, etc. So maybe tomorrow I'll read some of the stories about this amazing Pandal in New Delhi. because it was right on the eve of the 1971 war with Pakistan, which made it even more interesting. But from that 10 days, Srila Prabhupada made a deep and lasting impact on the spiritual priorities and policies of this nation. And then down to Vrindavan. On November 26, 1971, Prabhupada's first trip to Vrindavan with his Western devotees. I'll just read a couple of passages. The Delhi festival was finished, but there were matters to be watched carefully in Bombay and Mayapur, so we'd probably only stay in Vrindavan for 3 or 4 days. There was never much of a plan to these trips, usually just some vague arrangements. In this case, Srila Prabhupada and his immediate entourage and a few female devotees with us would be housed at Saraf Bhavan, a kind of guest house for upper-class pilgrims. The rest of the devotees went to a dharamshala nearby. Right away, Prabhupada took us sightseeing. Our first stop was the Radha Damodar temple. The tiny courtyard and rooms where Swamiji had sat for so many years designing the Hare Krishna movement seemed disappointingly small and drab at first. But when we saw the love in Srila Prabhupada's eyes and felt his connection with the place, we began to make the leap. Look behind what you observe in Vrindavan, through the layers and deeper dimensions where faith will take you, and there find the Holy of Holies. Is that a flute I hear? How many ecstatic dawns did Rupa Goswami see creep into this courtyard? On how many hundreds of freezing and sweltering nights did Prabhupada crouch by dim candlelight to extract our language from the Srimad Bhagavatam? As secretary, the cassette recorder and handheld mic are my best friends because they allow me to walk or sit beside Srila Prabhupada wherever he goes. My excuse is to record every word as he points with his cane and says, "This is the Samadhi of Jiva Goswami," or "Here is where Rupa Goswami wrote his books." Ha! Srila Prabhupada tells us the eternal stories of each place we pass, dead matter coming to life with his fluid animations. We are his kids being taken by their father to his childhood haunts, showing us where this or that actually occurred from tales we'd heard by the fireplace and before could only imagine. All right, on to Bombay. Right after Vrindavan, we went to Bombay, and Srila Prabhupada negotiated for the land in Juhu, nearly 5 acres, prime land. And then on to Jaipur, Madras. Oh, I've got a very good story on the train ride from Bombay to Madras. Shall I tell it? Shall I read it? Okay. Okay, I don't want you to get bored. All right. This is riding on a first-class air-conditioned compartment, just me and Prabhupada. It's a 12-hour or 14-hour, I forget, long ride, train ride from Bombay to Madras, and I'm alone with Srila Prabhupada in this one small compartment. And we've been going all day, and it's getting dark. It's dark. I extinguish all but the reading light above his tiny fold-down writing table, and then climb up. Oh, there are 2 bunk beds. He's sleeping on the bottom bed. I'm above him on the upper bunk. I climb up, spread a chador over my reclined body, and drowsing, watch Srila Prabhupada below. He puts on his glasses, arranges his books, presses buttons on his dictaphone, plays back yesterday's work, and starts to translate. He speaks slowly and clearly into his microphone, enunciating each word for his faraway editors, as eternal wisdom flows from the ageless author in an uninterrupted continuous stream. Rail tracks clackety-clack, from a tiny rewind, ding, 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 receding, a deserted crossing, and I fall into sleep. A far-off moan from the locomotive breaks my slumber. The light is out, and I scoot over to peer over the edge of my bed down to Prabhupada's bunk, expecting to see him sleeping. I've never seen him actually asleep. This may be a first. He's on his side in the starlight, his legs drawn up. And just then his right eye opens and stares into mine above, with no expression on his face, as if to say, "Thought you'd catch me sleeping, huh?" Okay, then we went to Visakhapatnam, and then on to, then on to Calcutta, and then to Mayapur. You can't even imagine the difficulties, the boys who were trying to get that Mayapur land started, what they had experienced over years of difficulties up there with floods and bandits, and people didn't want us there. Anyway, but Prabhupada overcame all of those obstacles, and he laid the cornerstone there on February 29th, 1972. And note this date, February 29th, 1972, because the next 3 weeks are about the most amazing 3 weeks in Srila Prabhupada's whole history. Well, right after he lays the cornerstone, a phone call comes in from Vrindavan, from Kiradakshai, who says that the Saraf people want to give him the land. He tells the story that the Sarafs couldn't decide. There were several spiritual groups they wanted to give this land to. They were all deserving of the Sarafs' mercy. So they decided to make it real simple. They asked for Kiradakshai to come, and they wrote on 2 pieces of paper, yes and no. And they put them in a pot in front of the deities, Radha and Krishna. And they asked Kiradakshai, now you reach in the pot and pull out one of those pieces of paper, and whatever it says, we will do. And of course, he pulled it out, and it said, yes. Krishna gave us this land. So Kiradakshai called Prabhupada and said, they've given us the land. So Prabhupada says, make arrangements. Let's go to Vrindavan immediately. So from Calcutta, then on March 10th, this is only 10 days after laying the cornerstone at Mayapur, Srila Prabhupada comes to Vrindavan. Now, all right, just read a little piece here. Again, we stayed on the 2nd floor at Saraf Bhavan, six rooms in a row, opening off a long hallway with stairs at one end. Prabhupada occupied the 3rd room down, and his small personal staff was quartered in the 4th room. What followed was one of the most amazing and amusing sitcoms ever, Swamiji's three-ring circus. Now, I won't talk about this. I won't read any more today on this. This will be tomorrow, one of tomorrow's stories. Srila Prabhupada's three-ring circus. It was hilarious. The summary is that in 3 days, Srila Prabhupada legally acquired the Raman-Reti land with all of the documents and everything registered with the authorities. He acquired the perpetual right for himself and his disciples to live at Radha Damodar Temple forever. And he organized and laid down on March 13th, 1972, the foundation stone for this very Krishna Balaram temple. And he laid out most of the buildings that you see here today. This was all in just a few days' time. We have February 29th, Mayapur, March 13th, Vrindavan. And then 7 days after arriving in Vrindavan and doing all this here, on March 17th, we rushed to Juhu. And he laid the cornerstone of the Juhu temple on March 23rd, 1972. There, the situation was also extremely difficult. It was a malarial swamp surrounded by mosquitoes and snakes. And the neighbors were very antagonistic. They lived on the property. Over 100 people lived on the property. You could never get them off. There was litigation going on with Mr. Nair. Despite all of those things, Prabhupada moved all the devotees in Bombay out to that place, and we camped there. He said that occupation is 9/10 of the law in India, and he was right. It was so hot, it was March. There were no facilities. People were getting typhoid and malaria, cholera. So that night, right after he laid the 3 cornerstones, in 3 weeks' time, Prabhupada called us into his room. That night, Srila Prabhupada turned serious. He has just committed to 3 massive projects in Mayapur, Vrindavan, and now Bombay. The work ahead of us is vast. He calls us together and asks, how will you manage? Millions of dollars must be raised. Huge construction must be planned and executed, and we are so few and so inexperienced. This was Prabhupada's 18 months in India. Look what he did. From 0 to 1,000 miles an hour in 18 months. So by the 1st of April 1972, Srila Prabhupada's work in India was booming. It was just 1 year, a little more than 1 year, maybe 18 months since his arrival in Bombay, with nothing but 20 untested youngsters. In less than 1 month, Srila Prabhupada has done the impossible. He's laid the cornerstones for his main 3 temples in India, despite all odds. Naxalite bandits, floods, cold, heat, lack of money, envious opponents, unsupportive godbrothers, caste Goswamis, a communist-leaning central government under martial law with strict rationing of construction materials, our shaky legal standing, and a handful of young but worn-out devotees. The lands we have acquired are so old, with so many contending proprietors, and so large, and in such vital locations, to even think of owning these properties is almost surreal. We are recent arrivals on Indian soil, with very little organization or social standing. And yet, despite these obstacles, Prabhupada's unrelenting desire to please Krishna has somehow prevailed. He did it. Seeing all this from the inside, typing his letters, making phone calls, huddled with him in late-night strategy sessions, I am in awe. This is Superman beyond anything yet, and he is just getting started. Against all odds, we were a powerful little force, our little army of Western devotees. With our eyes opened by Vedic knowledge, we went on to raise Krishna's flag in India. And Srila Prabhupada's message stormed across and captured this country. We went on then, on April 1st, for Australia, New Zealand, Hong Kong, Japan, Hawaii, and Los Angeles. All these amazing stories are in here, but I think it's a bit too much to get into today. That's volume 1. That's volume 2, the India story. The first part of the India story. There's more about India coming up in volume 3. But I've written volume 2 especially for the Indian devotees, so you can better understand the unimaginable foresight and the boundless energy and profound determination of Srila Prabhupada. How from almost nothing, Krishna consciousness was nearly extinct in India in 1970. How in such a short time Srila Prabhupada laid the groundwork and structure for the vast power and influence of ISKCON and Krishna consciousness in India today. I've written it like an adventure book. You hold on to something when you're reading this book. It's a thriller. But as I passed through nearly 4 years of research and writing these books, I was more amazed each day how superhuman this perfect person called Srila Prabhupada, how he came among us and performed these magic deeds. And when you're in it day to day, you don't see it. Now I can see it from afar, from 50 years away. It was a cosmic, dazzling accomplishment Srila Prabhupada did. I'm pretty old myself now, but I'm more optimistic than ever. Srila Prabhupada always said that he didn't want millions of stars. He just wanted one moon. And as I look out and see all you beautiful devotees, I see so many moons rising. Hoping that we realize what Prabhupada used to tell us every day. He said, "You must help me change the world." So this book is for you, dear friends. Now you have to change the world. There are 500 pages, 180 photos, 180 special photos. It's been a vast labor of love. And I'll be signing some books here in the front when we're done. If you can, try to buy a box at a special wholesale price for your friends. And please know that all income from these books goes directly to producing and publishing, printing Volume 3, which is already written. I'm just awaiting the finances to make it happen. And I hope to bring this to you in 2021. Thank you very much. All glories to Srila Prabhupada. Hare Krishna. Is there time for any questions or points? Does anybody have a question or a point they want to hear more about? Yes.
I wanted to ask you, since you've been many days and a lot of time close to Srila Prabhupada day and night, and I heard about him, I heard one disciple of Prabhupada comparing Srila Prabhupada to a sun, like a blazing sun, and he said it wasn't very easy to be next to him because he was so powerful.
Yes, so he was comparing Srila Prabhupada to a blazing sun. And he said, don't think that, he's a pure devotee, but it's not easy to be with a pure devotee. He's like, when the sun, if you're not careful, it can burn you. so close to him. I just want to know your feelings or emotions. Were you ever like afraid of Prabhupada? Or I don't know, like nervous? How did you feel? Or you were completely comfortable, confident? How was it your personal experience? Because he is one in 100,000 and millions, magnificent souls in one like that. So it's very interesting.
Well, yes, you're correct. That's a very good analogy. The sun. Prabhupada was like the sun, because the sun never stops blazing. Prabhupada never stopped. His outpouring of energy, all for Krishna. Every moment, every second of his consciousness was absorbed in doing something for Krishna. And of course, it was very intense to be around, just like you'd be burned by your proximity to the sun. But I could tell 1,000 stories how every day was different with Srila Prabhupada. Every moment was different with Srila Prabhupada. That was one of the wonders of his personality, that you could never predict what he would do or say next. Never. And the thrill of being with that kind of a person overcomes all kinds of anxieties, because one of the things, relationships that I had with Prabhupada, maybe more than anyone else perhaps, maybe Gurudas and a couple of others had the same, was a rasa of laughter. Prabhupada cracked me up. Everything he said and did was funny to me. Even when he, for example, would be sitting very seriously in a crowd with thousands of people addressing the crowds, sometimes I would just crack up, and he could hear me over there laughing, because I knew he was just kind of putting on the show in a certain way. One time I asked him, Srila Prabhupada, what is laughter? Prabhupada said, laughter is the difference between what you expect and what really happens. Surprise, isn't it? Surprise. Surprise is laughter. Surprises make us laugh. So, I don't know, that being with Prabhupada, being so joyous all the time, when you're laughing, you feel good. It's your best feeling when you're laughing. Because I laughed so much, I just never... And Prabhupada knew that he treated every individual differently. And according to your personality is how he interacted with you. For example, there were some devotees in those days who were real tough guys. They were Vietnam vets, machine gunners and stuff. So Prabhupada sometimes used anger and chastisement to make them change, or whatever if they needed that to improve their Krishna consciousness. But he knew if he ever got angry with me, that I would fall apart. I would die. If Prabhupada said a bad word to me, that would be it. Suicide, that's it. So he never got angry with me. Even though I made lots of mistakes, he should have gotten he knew he just couldn't do it with me. So he treated everyone differently. And you never knew when you opened the door to his room what was going to happen when you came in, but it would always be delightful, whatever it was. And there was kind of an aura around Prabhupada. You say the sun, the intense heat, but there was an aura around Prabhupada, almost like air conditioning. It was cooler when you got closer to him. And it was so calming. You knew that as long as he was anywhere near, in the same room, or anywhere, even in the same house, or even in the same town, nothing bad would happen. Everything was safe and secure. Everything. No matter what. He was a perfect person. Thank you, that was a good question. All right. Thank you. you very much. I'll sign some books in the back. Oh, we're meeting again tomorrow at the same time at 5.
You have a question?
Yeah, Hare Krishna. Is there time for more questions?
Sure, I mean,
It's kind of in continuation of the question that was asked. The more I hear or I read about Srila Prabhupada, I see how many amazing qualities, how an amazing person he is. And I'm very curious to hear from you, if you could pick one thing for you personally, for you, what is the most amazing thing for you in his personality?
people often ask me, what is the most amazing thing that you remember from Prabhupada? And I just have no answer for that. Because every moment with him was amazing. There isn't any one moment that's more amazing. I mean, he did spectacular things every time he did anything. Does that answer your question? I don't have any one thing that's more amazing than anything else. The story of Russia is amazing. It just depends on what level you're looking at amazing from. Just to watch him eat something was amazing. In my old age, I notice how many mistakes I make every day. From the moment I wake up in the morning, I'm making one mistake after another. I drop something, I forget something, I do something that's wrong. But Prabhupada didn't make mistakes. Every action of his life was graceful and error-free.
I feel very blessed that I just came from USA and I'm listening to you and I got the book and whatever I'm reading. I feel so blessed that I come to meet you and let me spend time with Prabhupada. I'm so very grateful.
Okay.
Very grateful.
Okay, well, thank you. That's very grateful to see you. It only makes it all worthwhile seeing you guys here. Whatever we did in those days is only because of you. You are the result. You are the fruits that make us happy. So tomorrow we're speaking again here at 5. Is that the plan? Yeah. Yeah, Prajum.
Thank you. I wanted to ask if you remember what the first conversation you had with Prabhupada was, and if you remember what the first thing he said to you that really struck you, that really made you realize what a person he is.
Yeah. Well, my first conversation with Prabhupada is roughly like this. I came up to his room. We had that mantra rock dance concert the night before in January 1967. And apparently he asked Mukunda, who is responsible for this dance? And he said, well, ShyamaSundar. So he called me to his room, my first personal meeting with Prabhupada. He wasn't Prabhupada yet, he was the Swami. He called me in. Mukunda had told me, when you come in, first take your shoes off, put them outside. And when you come in, you bow down first. So I knew the etiquette a little bit, I bowed down. But I didn't really know what a Swami was or anything about this guy. And first thing he says to me, he says, oh, so you have made this dance last night? I said, well, Swamiji, myself and all of us together, we all did it. He said, how much money have you made? That was his first question. How much money have you made? I said, well, I'm not sure Malati took the monies, but I think around $2,000. And his eyes went about that big. Said, oh. And then he looked at me and he said, one who makes the money must know how to spend. Now, do you know bookkeeping? That was his second question. Do you know bookkeeping? So it kind of illustrates how Prabhupada had two sides. You know, the vision of Krishna, nothing is impossible. Go for the rhino, go for the biggest thing you can make. But the other side was the practicality of everything. Do you know bookkeeping? And then he proceeded to get a piece of paper and he drew a line down there. He said, now you put on the left income and you put on the right expenses. And then he made different entries there as examples to how to keep books. I didn't want to be a book. He wanted me to be the treasurer. I didn't really want to because I'm a spendthrift. I spend money as fast as I make it. But that was my job for a few weeks, and it got me in Prabhupada's room door every day to go over the books with him. How much money? One day I didn't have. He says, "And what is this expense?" I said, "Well, 38 cents for something." He says, "Where's the receipt?" Well, I didn't get a receipt. You must get receipt for everything. That was one of his first lessons. I do it to this day. I take receipts for anything I get. I just keep them in envelopes. I don't know why.
Now we know why.
Yeah. In case Prabhupada calls me back, right?
We will show your receipt.
All glories to Prabhupada. Well, we'll pick up tomorrow this time, 5. Okay. Thank you so much.